What would you do with 30 additional years of life? My guest today says he and his colleagues have broken the longevity code and know the secrets to all of us living decades beyond the current life expectancy. You want to meet him? Well, he's here today, and he has all the information you need to live a longer and healthier life. Coming up next.
Live from Los Angeles, this is the Special Report with Areva Martin.
Joining me today for our special on living longer and healthier lives is Dr. Michael Roizen. He is the Chief of Wellness and Preventative Medicine at the renowned Cleveland Clinic. He's also the Chief Medical Consultant for the Dr. Oz Show. He's the author of 4 #1 New York Times best-selling books, including What to Eat When, and his latest book, which is available now for pre-order but drops next September, is The Great Age Reboot: Cracking the Longevity Code for a Younger Tomorrow. He chaired an FDA advisory committee. He's the originator of the popular website, realage.com. He has won multiple awards, including an Emmy. And he's also published over 190 peer-reviewed articles. This guy is a genius, I should say. And he's back on the special report to help us understand how we can all live longer. I'm so excited to have Dr. Roizen joining me this morning. Okay, Dr. Roizen, you got me interested in this topic when you were on the show talking about COVID, and we were talking about why it was so important to get the vaccination. And you just kind of threw out there that there was this research to show that we were going to be living 30 years longer. So I told my producers, you've got to get Dr. Roizen back because we've got to have a whole show on how you've cracked the longevity code. So welcome back. Today is all about healthy living and living longer. So my first question to you is, why this book, The Great Age Reboot, and why now?
The only reason, this is crazy. I've written 22 books for the lay public, but the only reason to write them is when the science changes and you want people to be prepared for something or to do something. In other words, it's to help people change behavior in a way they understand. And if people are going to live to 110 to 115, but feel 40 and act 40, that's what this is. With an 80% probability by 2030 or so, and the or so is it may occur in 2028, may occur in 2035, but it's coming, that we're going to be 40 when we're 90. Now, when your producer, Candy Amelon, first did this, and she'll tell you I was probably a crazy person because I rejected being on the Oprah show twice until she came and said, and she really twisted my arm, but I had rejected that, not because of anything other than I was told I shouldn't come on a show if the book is more than 7 days away. So I'm breaking that for you. But she'll tell you that I said in 98 or 9, that 40, you were going to be able to be 60 and feel and act 40 because of the changes coming. That's actually occurred over the last 20 years. We now think that the progress in science is going to be so great that you're going to be able to be 40 when your calendar age is 90. That is, you're going to be able to function as a much younger person. And so we need to prepare for that. That's going to take an emotional change. It's going to
So we're going to be able to function when we're 90. When our calendar year is 90, we're going to be able to function like we're 40. But what are we going to look like?
You're going to look the same. In fact, that's one of the interesting. You may look younger even. Areva, it's tough to look younger than you are now. But in any case, for the rest of us, let me go and tell you one of the. I'm going to go on a 2-minute goose chase to bring you back to that question, if you will. But there are 14 areas of aging mechanism research. That means 14 areas that say, how are we going to function younger? And when you're 90, you're not going to act like the 90-year-old today, but you're going to act as a kick-ass producer as the 40-year-old today. And when they did this in one of the areas, hyperbaric, it's not really hyperbaric oxygen, but a hormetic hyperbaric oxygen, which means the change in your oxygen level from high to low, high to low, high to low was key to stimulating you being younger. But when they did that, the thing that changed most was skin age. So you're going to look younger. So in fact, this was done in a group of 90 people. And the only people who volunteered for the skin biopsies were men. But they followed them for the 2 years, and their skin while they got 2 years older, their skin got 6 years younger. Wow. So you're going to be able to reverse, and this is the first time we've been able to slow aging. That's how 60 is the new 40. We've slowed it a bunch. But, that's by exercise and stress management and eating healthier, et cetera, and literally getting rid of tobacco, et cetera. But now you're going to be able to, if the research in these 14 areas with animals, and it's starting to trickle into humans, is correct, you're going to be able to reboot yourself younger. So we now know we can make a 107-week-old rat, which is the equivalent of about 105 human years, a 42-week-old rat, the equivalent of about 40 years old in human years.
How long has this research been going on, Dr. Roizen, in animals? And you said rats.
Well, it really started in mice in the 1960s. And you can go a little further back and say, well, it really started in the Great Depression when they didn't have enough food to feed animals. And so they found that calorie restriction slowed their rate of aging. And in fact, it wasn't that. What we found recently is it's feeding in a small time window, changes the genes, not changes the genes, but changes which genes are on or not to reverse aging. So when you fast for more than 14 hours, you develop ketosis. And if you do the ketosis right, when you refeed, you regenerate new cells. When you go into ketosis, your body says, your genes say, it's really your epigenes say, hey, you're in starvation. We've got to kill some of our old cells to recycle them into new cells. And that's what happens. You start to recycle old cells into younger cells. And when you eat again, you produce younger cells. So in the old days, we used to think calorie restriction was the secret. It's the time window that they did calorie restriction because they couldn't feed the mice in those experiments in the Great Depression throughout the day. They gave them just a few pellets and they ate them all at once. And so they were really doing fasting for the mice is what happened. So what we've learned is in these 14 areas, calorie restriction or calorie restriction mimicking is one of those areas where you get to reset your epigenes. What does that mean? Well, you have a lot of energy when you're 5 years old.
Right.
By the time you're 55, you can't chase the 5-year-old and keep up with the 5-year-old. But what's the reason? It's because your mitochondria, which are the energy factories that take fat and glucose and turn it into ATP, get errors in it as they get older. But what if you could reset your mitochondria to your 5-year-old no error mitochondria? Then you'd have the energy of a 5-year-old. We figured out, not we, but scientists, the guy who won the Nobel Prize for that is a guy named Yamanaka in Japan, had figured out the 4 genes that you had to turn on to get those repaired mitochondria. Well, just imagine if...
Let me ask you something real quick. Is any of this going to have to be done inside of a laboratory or an expensive hospital? Because I'm sitting here thinking this all sounds great. If so far what you've said, this concept of intermittent fasting, anybody can do it. You don't need money. You don't have to be wealthy. You just change your diet. You eat at certain times and you fast at other times. But does any of this rebooting of these, 14 areas, is it going to take, money? Are you going to have access to capital? You're going to have to go into a hospital.
The answer is some of these areas do right now, but let me give you an example. So CRISPR-Cas9 is one of these areas. CRISPR-Cas9 is a gene editing. So people have hemoglobin S, sickle cell disease. Well, we can edit that out and produce only hemoglobin that lets you live without pain and longer. Is that being done? Yeah, it's being moved into humans. As you probably know, I think there are at least 18 in the study reported in the New England Journal where they live without pain. How do they do that? They gave CRISPR-Cas9. How much does that cost? The actual delivery of that is $100. Now, what do they charge for? Well, they got a whole bunch of other studies going along, right? So they're charging a lot more for it. But the actual thing is $18. It's going to come down, especially because a lot of these things will be available to the masses. So let me give you another example. I'm going to give you two examples. So one is heart failure. About 30% of heart failure is caused by an abnormal quaternary folded amyloid. You've heard of amyloid for the brain, Alzheimer's. Well, it also is in the heart. And when the amyloid in the heart is misfolded, that is, instead of going a left turn, it goes on a right turn, you get an abnormal amyloid that causes heart failure. How long will you live? Maybe 18 months. Well, just imagine you can knock that gene out with CRISPR-Cas9. And they've done that in 6 people in Australia with this. And guess what? Instead of an 18-month life expectancy, in these group, it was actually 6 to 8 months, they now have an 18-year life expectancy.
Wow.
So they're already being rebooted, if you will, 18 years. So that's why we say longevity is the next disruptor and the greatest disruptor. The chip from 61 years ago enhanced life, but this gives you life. And so that's why people have to prepare for this.
Well, let me ask this. Let's talk about a couple of factors you've raised. I know the book says that people are going to be able to live to 100, 120, maybe even 130 years old.
Areva, I'm going to do something unpolitically correct. How old are you?
I will never tell you. For purposes of this exercise, let's say I'm 35.
Okay, let's say I can do it easier if you're 40. So if you're 40, your life expectancy is about 120 based on what?
Already? It's 120?
It will be 120, I'm saying.
But that won't happen until 2035, right? Or
sometime in that era, right. Right now, your life expectancy is probably about 90, 95. You're doing healthy things. So it's going to get extended. And what does that mean? Well, if you put away even a 3% of a minimum wage salary because of compounding, if you put it into
I don't want to move on to economics yet, Dr. Roizen. I want to just make sure we're clear. I want everybody to be clear about this longevity, because this is huge. Like you said, to think that people are going to be calendar years 90, but feeling like they're 40. And you told us the skin.
And your physiology will be 40. You'll have the energy you had you're not even 40 yet, maybe. So you'll have the energy that you had when you were a younger kid.
What does this matter? What your ethnicity or race is? Is this going to be across all races and all ethnicities? Because we know African Americans,
as far as we know, it will be.
Or African Americans have lost a year of life expectancy as a result of COVID. So how will this impact African Americans?
Well, as long as you're not already 6 feet under, you're going to get the same benefits. And so and if you will, the amazing thing is, the reason of writing the book is to prepare for it and to understand the value of compounding. So if you take even a minimum wage of $15 an hour salary and compound it, it ends up with a huge amount of money by the time you're 65. And every 10 years, it goes up by 1.6 fold. So you really, just imagine this is you'll be even at that salary with and assuming you compound it at 4% and put away 3% every year, you'll have, I think it is, over $1 million by the time you're, in today's dollars, by the time you're 95. And so the trick is staying well enough and healthy enough and understanding that you're going to you don't want to quit work. You want to keep working as long as you can, as healthily as you can, in something you're passionate about.
How are we going to change the culture? Because you say something really important, Dr. Roizen. So several decades ago, people retired. There was a period where people retired at like 55. And then that was extended to 60 or 65. How are we going to change the mindset of folks who think, okay, as I get 65, I retire? Under this theory, if you're going to live to be 100 or 110, when will people retire?
It's going to be an emotional change. That's part of why we have to prepare for it. So people, if you're going to live to 100, just think of this. You're going to live to 120, let's say, conservatively, Areva. You don't want to retire at 65 and have 55 years on some beach or in some golf course or in some tennis court or whatever your passion is, because you're going to have a lot of productive and wonderful chances of living and seeing, if you will, families.
Population growth, though. So people are, that means...
No, we're great. The problem is we're having a population decline, right? We're not fertile anymore. If you will, Japan.
We have over the last 10 years, we've seen birth rates decline. We just did a show on that. So we've had some.
Yeah, so birth rates have declined and they're almost falling off a cliff now. We need 2.2 children per woman to stay even. We're not getting 1.5 now. And in Japan and Korea, they're at all record 1.2. If we don't keep importing people, called immigration, we're in big trouble from a population standpoint. But if the cure is longevity, that's the whole point. If you're working till age 90, you're going to pay into Social Security till 90, you're going to pay into Medicare till 90, and the system, longevity, ends up being the cure, not the problem.
So let's talk about, Dr. Roizen, practical things for people who may get excited thinking they're going to add this 30, 40 years to their life. What should they be doing now in terms of their diet, their exercise, their lifestyle?
So that's right. So, and I won't say in the book very often, but in the book, we go through a full plan, and there are a couple of major things. One, and you've started, the big six are, if you will, your stress management. So it is learn a program of stress management, whatever you do, and practice it daily. Second is there are 4 forms of physical activity that make a difference in how long you live. Any, like walking, cardiovascular activity, it should be number 3. Number 2 should be resistance, doing things against weight, and then jumping. And then food choices. Food is a relationship. You wouldn't marry someone who's trying to kill you every day. You shouldn't eat food that's trying to kill you every day. So you want to eat food that you love and that loves you back. And what that means is avoiding things that raise your blood sugar too fast, because sugar, and especially fructose, when in corn syrup and syrups, ages you. So you want to avoid simple sugars, added syrup, simple carbohydrates, and then food that has saturated fat with carnitine lesser than choline. The reason that is, in something over 80% of us, if we have saturated fat at the same time we have carnitine, red meat, or choline or lecithin, such as in egg yolks, we change the bacteria inside us to produce inflammation. So we've gone over stress, exercise or physical activity, food choices that keep you alive and eaten in a short time window. And the fourth one is, of course, avoiding toxins like tobacco. Fifth is probably sleep. And the sixth is getting our finances in order. And so those are all
the five. I've heard a lot. How does getting your finances in order help you live longer? I'm curious about that.
because financial stress is the largest cause of stress in America. And although you can meditate and manage relationship stress, you can meditate and manage most of the other forms of stress. Financial stress is the one you have to deal with, or else it comes back and haunts you constantly.
Well, let's talk about weight, Dr. Roizen. There's so many conflicting stories. They have those weight charts that all doctors have. They measure how tall you are, and they say based on your height, if you're male or female, you should weigh a certain amount. They've come under attack recently, or they've been under attack by a lot of folks saying that they're too Eurocentric focused. They focused on white, particularly as it relates to women, thin white women. So, where should people be thinking about their weight?
The data has been the same in all races from a standpoint of aging. So God or whoever made us all alike enough that our body mass index is a very good scheme, or even better is our height to waist ratio. So height to waist is the one thing that matters. So if you look at BMI, even Michael Jordan in his prime would have been called obese, but he wasn't, obviously, because his waist was less than half his height. So the key point is you want your waist to be half your height or less.
So do the math.
But aging.
Hold on. So if you're 5'8", that's how many inches?
So that's 68 inches. 5 feet times 5 times 12 is 60, and 8 is 68 inches. So you want a waist. Now, where do you measure your waist? Your waist is at your belly button with you sucking in. So you're going to suck in anyway, but it's put it around and then suck in. And
that
it's
waist should be more than 34 inches.
It's because the belly fat is the one that ages you. Now, coming soon, though, by 2030, because it's in 3 species now, is we can regress white fat, which is the fat that ages you, to what we call pluripotent fat. It can turn into brown fat as well. Brown fat is brown because it has more mitochondria. And it's really good fat because it increases your metabolic rate. You got to forgive me. I get so excited here. I speak too fast, so I apologize. But brown fat takes, if you will, your calories and uses them fast to produce heat.
But how do you know if you have brown fat or white fat? How do you know that?
Hold on. Brown fat we have when we're kids to keep us warm. It's what newborns have.
You call it baby fat, right?
It's not quite baby fat. Baby fat is the fat here in the middle that is extra. What brown fat is around your neck and around your heart and around your glands to keep them warm so that they don't get too cold when your mom isn't close enough to keep you warm. But it is metabolically active. Now, I didn't know this, but they did it in mice and rats. Fine, who cares about a warm or a thin mouse? But they do it in lambs. Lambs apparently die and stop producing wool, etc., when they get fatty liver disease, something that us Americans get as well when we get too fat. But they were able to take these lambs and turn their white fat into brown fat by this pluripotent fat trick. It's been done at 5 different institutions with different animal species now. It's going to come to humans and eliminate obesity.
Wow.
So, yeah, that's a why.
You're saying it's the white fat that causes obesity.
It's the white fat that causes aging. I don't care whether you're fat or thin. I care whether you're aging or not. So forgive me, but the brown fat causes you to get thin.
But you're saying,
and that stops. And the reason that's important is it stops inflammation and stops aging.
But is there a correlation between being overweight and aging? Like if you're overweight, are you aging more quickly?
If you have it in the middle, remember that height to weight ratio. You want your height to you want your waist to be less than half your height. If it's more, the fat around the middle, which is generally white fat, causes inflammation, which causes you to get older.
Okay. So you really need to focus on that number, that waist number, to make sure it's half of your height, because that's a good indicator that you have the right amount of white fat and brown fat, and you're not aging yourself by having too much white fat.
That's right. So brown fat is good, and it increases your metabolic rate, so you get thinner. So we want to transfer, and that's one of these 14 areas of transformation, what we call epigenetic reprogramming of fat from white to brown.
And in addition to, we talked about, you said, exercise, your diet, your weight, your stress management. Let's talk about stress for a minute. This country, we're all stressed out, right? We're in the middle of a pandemic. We lockdowns, schools closed. What do we, how do we manage stress given all the external factors?
It isn't just this country. We did a bunch of tests on stress at the Cleveland Clinic, starting way back in 1980. And the stress level we had, Carnegie Mellon set the perceived stress scale. The average was, and higher is more stress, the average was 12.1 for men, 13.7 for women. The average in 2010 for men and women in the United States was 19.5. That's what we call 5 standard deviations more. That would cause chronic disease. So, and now you said it was around the world, Dr. Roizen. Yeah, we did it in China. We did it in Saudi Arabia. We did it in Abu Dhabi. We did it in Canada. We did it in France. We literally did it in 14 countries around the world, and the world was stressed out. It wasn't just America, it was every place. So, but they're easy stress techniques, whether it is deep breathing or guided imagery, or there literally are, people sign up for these apps that cost $25 to $35 a month, but they're free apps on, they're free internet sites where they teach you deep breathing or they teach you guided imagery. The key is having someone to practice it with and to get it, and then you practice it by yourself. So one of the techniques I do is what we call double breathing for 5 minutes morning and night. Take a breath and then take another inspiration and then blow it out slowly from your mouth. And just doing that, forcing yourself to do that, not only good for your lung expansion and teaches your lungs how to expand better, the double inspiration, but actually is a way of managing stress.
So I know a lot of people go to yoga. A lot of people, do take classes to manage your stress. I assume you think those are good ideas, but you're saying you don't have to go to class. You don't have to do anything extravagant. You can do some of these things in your own home, and they're not costly to do.
They're basically free. Okay. You can even do it while you're sitting on the throne, if you will.
Let's do that exercise again. I want to make sure I have it down. So can we do the breathe?
Take a big breath and then take a little extra breath and then blow it out through your mouth. So you want the breaths in through your nose. And and it's not a natural thing, right? But it does expand your lungs. It makes you focus on it, and it really is great for.
You should do that for 5 minutes every day.
5 minutes every day. Okay. And if you do it 5 minutes, and then something stressful happens to you, you just do it. No one has to even notice you're doing it.
Why does it make you? Why do you feel like you're going to faint?
Because in fact you got to practice it, because you're getting a little, you don't do it too fast. It's a slow expiration, so you feel like you're going to faint if you do it too fast.
Well, let me ask you about this concept called velocity, Dr. Roizen. So you talk about this in the book in terms of preparing our minds, because if we're going to be 100, in 120, like how are we going to be sharp? Like our memories and our, our mental acuity, how is that going to stay intact? Because we know now as we age, we start to lose a lot of that, right?
Now, I'm going to break a story that hasn't been in the news much, but there are 30, until this week, there were 32 things that have been shown in at least 2 studies to change the rate of brain aging and keep your brain young. And we've already gone over the physical activity. Now you say, why does stressing your muscle improve your memory? Well, it turns out, and who knows why whoever it was evolved the system, made it, but if you stress your muscle, you turn on
your brain muscle.
No, stress your abdominal muscle, stress any muscle. Stress, you're doing it with breathing. The way you're breathing, you're stressing your muscle now. But doing physical activity, so you can do it as simple as squeezing a ball, right? And that's stressing the muscle. What happens in that muscle? It turns on a gene. Why it does this, who knows? That releases a small protein called arisen. Arisen gets across what we call your blood-brain barrier and increases brain-derived neurotrophic growth factor. It's fertilizer for your brain. And that increases your hippocampal size. Only one organ in the body where size matters, it's your hippocampus, because it's the memory center. So when you do that, why does squeezing this like this turn on the gene that makes arisen, that makes my brain better? Who knows? But it does. It may be because if you needed to escape some animal when you were young and you needed to be clever enough to run up a tree or avoid whatever that animal would do to capture you. So anyway, so there are 32 things like that change your rate of aging. This week, we learned Viagra may also as well in both men and women. So this is a very clever project. I'm going to boost my own Cleveland Clinic because it was a research project. The group at the Cleveland Clinic in basic science used artificial intelligence to look at the fourth dimension of both the receptors in the brain that accept amyloid and tau protein and the structure of all approved drugs by the FDA. So this is how do you do it cheap, right? So we could buy a new drug that Biogen did that reduced amyloid by about 11% in the brain. Or with Viagra, that turns out they found that when they put this into animal models, it decreased amyloid by 65%. And when they looked at it they then went to a database of humans, both men and women who were taking Viagra, or the women take it for pulmonary hypertension, but they found a 69% reduction in Alzheimer's disease in the men who took Viagra. Why? Because it blocked amyloid and tau from attaching to the neurons, so you didn't get the neuronal destruction.
So let me ask you, so are all doctors now going to be prescribing?
Well, it's now what they've done, now where they are is they're going to randomize controlled trials of Viagra for exactly that, to know whether it really works or whether this was a fact that the people who were using Viagra had something different going on. But just imagine, so we know that 6 cups of coffee decreases amyloid accumulation over a 10-year period by 60% or so. That does it 6-fold greater than the drug that's $100,000 a year. So for $1,000 or $2,000 at most, if you take Keurig, make 6 cups of coffee a day, right? And
is that caffeine in that coffee going to create other issues though?
Well, hopefully it won't, because 80-some% of us are fast metabolizers. For most of us, there's no reason to stop caffeine until we're 6 hours from bedtime. But in fact,
caffeine has been proven to reduce some chemical in our brain that we need a reduction of to help with our
to prevent Parkinson's disease and Alzheimer's disease and dementia in general.
So we should be drinking more caffeinated drinks, not with sugar, but coffee or tea.
It may be the polyphenols in coffee or tea. It looks like 50% of the value you can get from decaf if you want to go decaf.
What else can we do to create, a situation where our brain doesn't age, where we don't get Alzheimer's?
So I've gone over a couple of them with physical activity, eating the right foods, foods that don't cause inflammation. And one that you brought up, so speed in both exercise, doing high intensity interval training, but speed like that in doing speed of processing games. So the one type of, if you will, brain game is if you do a game challenging your grandson or son or two, who can do better on the, if you will, the game that you do on your computer. But those are called speed of processing games, meaning how fast can you do it and do it correctly. And by doing that, we don't know the mechanism of this, but by doing 18 hours of practice over 10 years. So how expensive is 18 hours over 10 years? So do 18 hours over 10 years, 2 hours a year, and it decreased the rate of dementia in people who were 73 going to 83, large group, 2,600 people. It decreased that by over 40%. So that's another. So when you add velocity, it's both velocity and exercise and velocity of speed games. And you don't even have to be mobile to do that. You can sit in a 2x2 library queue at your neighborhood library and do it.
So, Dr. Roizen, if you don't do any of these things, let's say you have a horrible diet, you're not exercising, you're not, working out your brain muscle, and you live to be 100 or 120 based on this rebooting theory, are you still going to reap the benefits of being like 120, but yet you're 40 in terms of your functionality? Or does it only apply to those people that are following these good, healthy living habits?
We don't know the answer to the question. It's such a good question, Areva. So what we say in the book is it's better to be prepared in any case, right? Just in case you need to be healthy to do this. But the data, George Church at, this is crazy, if you will. This is so crazy. I couldn't believe it. I thought it was fake news on the internet, but I watched George Church give an interview on it. They have taken in his lab, he's a genetics professor. He was the mentor of the person who developed CRISPR-Cas9 at Harvard. He's at Harvard and MIT, has taken male beagle dogs between 17 and 19 and rebooted them with with 3 of the 4 Yamanaka factors to 3-year-old puppies, except they keep all their knowledge of their brain. So he has made their brain and the whole body young, and they are like play with me puppies. You say this is crazy, right? But that's how fast. Literally, when I started this field, Candy Amelon will tell you, when I started this field, all I had to read was 2 articles a month. Then it got to be 2 a week. Now it is like 2 every 6 hours. It is about 12 a day you have to read to keep up. That's how fast the science is going.
Do you have any people, Dr. Roizen, that you talk to when you present this information to them, this theory of longevity, that say, I don't want to live to be that long. If I get to be 75 or 80, I think I'm good.
Well, you have a lot. Even one of my even some of the people I talk to every day say, look, just kill me off at 75. But they don't realize they're going to get to be 40 again. So just imagine yourself, if you will, Areva, you're probably not even 40. So imagine yourself 25 again and having a ball, or 35 when you were having a ball.
People who are saying they don't want to live this long are imagining what 75 and 80 look like today.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
And you're not going to be there. That's the amazing thing. You're going to get a reboot.
Wow. I'm not going to say your age unless you choose to say it, because I wouldn't say mine, but you've been at this a while and you are still.
You can say it. Men don't care. I'm 75.
Okay, well, you're 75 years young, and look at what you're doing. You're writing new books. You've already written more than a dozen. You've gotten 4 New York Times best-selling books. You've gotten all these accolades.
Look, I got 9 New York Times bestsellers, but 4 number ones. So
9. Okay. Oh, I'm sorry. Correct me. 9 New York Times bestsellers. That's such a amazing feat in and of itself. Do you feel right now that you're slowing down at all, or are you feeling like you're going to get to be 120?
Well, I am slowing down, but I'm going to get a reboot. So, as my son said to me the other day as we were walking in a hall, and he's a pediatrician at Children's Hospital Philadelphia, and I was there visiting the grandchild, and we were walking in a hall, and he said, "Dad, this is the first time I've actually been able to walk faster than you." So I'm slowing down a little bit.
But you are anticipating a reboot, and you're not thinking about retiring or sitting in a rocking chair, doing any of those things we used to associate, not today, but used to associate with retirement.
If I get to be 90 or so and there isn't a reboot, then I'm going to at least hang it up from seeing patients. And you always worry, as a physician, you always worry, am I doing the best job for my patients? So when I stop being able to do that, assuming the reboot hasn't happened yet, that's when I'm going to hang it up. Yes.
But you are saying people who are now, today, listening to this program, who are 75 years old, can reap the benefits. It's like it doesn't happen. You don't have to get to 2035 to experience this reboot, is what you're saying.
Well, you're able to slow aging a great deal now. And it's happening all the time, if you will. I mean, the CRISPR-Cas9 on hemoglobin S, on sickle cell disease, on heart failure problems, the plasma exchange, the hyperbaric oxygen. Those are actually, they're at the villages in Florida, and I have no idea. They're doing a huge study on the hyperbaric oxygen, as they are in Israel, as they are in Abu Dhabi, as they are in France. So this is in Spain. They did therapeutic plasma exchange, which is already done a whole bunch of times. We call it plasmapheresis. Young people do it as plasma donation. They get the same thing with plasma donation. They get paid for it. But in these studies, they're showing that it reverses aging in all your organs. So we shouldn't let just the kids do plasmapheresis or donation of plasma. Us old people should be able to do it too. But this is happening so fast. Literally, reading 2 papers a week that intensely is very doable. Reading 2 papers every 6 hours, because they come out from all China and India, as well as Saudi Arabia, as well as in Israel and the United States. It's not just a U.S.-centric publications of science now; it's around the world, and so it really requires. It's both stimulating to see it and read it, but it's tough to keep up. So I'm going to hopefully there'll be some young kid keeping me up and ready for my, or there'll be 4 of us in a team that each takes part of an area. But it's going to happen, I think. It's at least an 80% probability that we're going to be able to look almost as young as you are.
Well, I just got to say thank you. We got to leave it there, Dr. Roizen. We're out of time. But boy, this is a fascinating subject matter. I've got to start thinking about, what I'm going to be doing at 90. I wasn't planning to be writing books and hosting shows and, dancing at parties. But now I've got to rethink all of my 90 to 120 year life. Thank you.
Well, your 90 to 120 will be like 40 to 60 now.
That's what I'm saying. I got to think about all the trips I'll be taking and all the fun I'll be having at 90 to 120. Thank you so much for writing this book. Thank you for your research. Thank you for sharing it here on the special report. We're super excited to get it make sure our viewers start making that adjustment and thinking about those extra 30 years. What are you going to do with those extra 30 years? That should be what everybody's thinking about going into 2022. You're going to have extra 30 years added on to your life. What are you going to do with it?
Thank you, and hopefully I'll come on again if you want near when the book is out, because that's when Candy. I would say yes to Candy, then, not just yes to you.
Yes, we'll definitely have you back on when the book is out, so we go in greater detail. Because this is something we want to keep talking about. We want people to know about. We want them to be ready. We want to make sure people are doing their exercise, eating right, and getting their mind prepared for those things.
And we should say, in the meantime, getting their booster shots so something stupid doesn't knock them off in the meantime.
What great advice. What a great way to end this show. Thank you so much again, Dr. Roizen. What an amazing topic, subject matter, information. I am just so incredibly overwhelmed to learn that I'm going to live to be 30 to 40 years, older than 90, which is essentially what Dr. Roizen is saying. And I just love that he says that we can control this. We have so many things that we can do. So it's not like we have to have a lot of money. We don't have to run to some expensive hospital or get some expensive procedure. We just have to do some simple things like, change our diets if it's not, loving us back, as he said. I love that concept of have a relationship with your food. Make sure your food is loving you back in the same way that you want people to love you back. That we can exercise more, walking and jumping and resistance training, and then working our minds out. So some simple things, including that booster shot, which is also so important, just to be ready for this shift in culture. 90 will be the new 40. It's mind-blowing. He says it's going to happen. This is a guy that's written 9 New York Times best-selling books. He's at the renowned Cleveland Clinic. So he's not, someone that's just out there putting, kind of quack theories in the universe. This guy knows what he's talking about. So you heard it here, y'all. Y'all going to get to be 120 years old. I'm just tickled by that. Some words to live by before I get out. The secret to living, in addition to all those things that Dr. Roizen told us, the secret to living well and longer is eat half, walk double, laugh triple, and love without measure. I'm out. Y'all be safe out there. Get your booster shot, wear your mask, and remember, we're all in this together.